Welcome back to the Wolverine.com podcast. We're doing the video edition, as is our habit these days. And we're welcoming in someone who is at the center of a whole lot of exciting action these days. Brian Boesch, who is your radio play-by-play man for Michigan basketball. Brian, tough one yesterday. Michigan cuts a 15-point deficit down to 2 and has a chance against Illinois at home, and then it just slips away at the end. Welcome back, first of all, and give us your thoughts on what happened.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you having me as always, John. It felt like that team was just very much scratching and clawing and doing everything that it could just to get back in the game. And then when it got close, it was really tough for it to get over the hump and actually take a lead and have a chance to win the game. And, on that end, you credit Illinois. I mean, how many times do you see a team shoot 71% in a half, let alone a second half on the road against a good team in the league? I mean, that's just remarkable. And they did it pretty differently first half to second half, with Alfonso Plummer taking over in the first half. Kofi Coburn was great in the second half. Andre Curbelo might have had his best half of the Big Ten slate. He's really kind of had a lost season for Illinois. So you tip your cap to them, and you realize, if you're Michigan, that hey, there are some adjustments to be made, but I do think that there is some optimism in that. When they needed to find some shots, they needed to create for themselves. When you had some must-score possessions, they were able to score. Now they just need to try to figure out some more things defensively against a type of team like Illinois, where if you want to have designs of getting into the second weekend and beyond in March, you're gonna have to face some teams that are loaded like Illinois.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, against Illinois, you're going to have your hands full with Kofi Coburn, but you don't necessarily know that Alfonso Plummer is going to come out of nowhere and drop 6 threes on you. That really led to that big deficit, and it's such a climb back. For Michigan, you've got uh, Devontae Jones scoring big, 10 assists, a really big basketball game for him. Um, and yet with Eli Brooks, we heard that he may play, he may not play. It sounded like he was set back a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know too much about how that situation played out, but obviously when he's out there, the expectations remain the same, and I think Eli would tell you that. And the reality is, I mean, Eli has never been wanting to be a primary scorer. He has that ability, and he had his hands full defensively on a few different guys, and that's been the case. Drawing Johnny Davis and Madison last weekend, and I mean, he's had to go up against some of these teams' best scorers, and obviously he's giving up the size advantage against a lot of them. So for me, I mean, what Devontae Jones has done as of late, it kind of started in that first game at Illinois, if you recall, where Michigan was shorthanded. They played their tails off and just didn't have the horses in that game. They did on Sunday here at Chrysler Center. They had the horses. They weren't able to get it done, and you tip your cap to Illinois in that regard. But I do think that the evolution of Devontae Jones has been really fun to watch. I mean, what do you have? 8 or 9 field goal makes and then 10 assists. I mean, he created, was directly involved in more than 2/3 of Michigan's field goal makes in the game. So he's rounding into form. I know it probably took a little bit longer than people expected, but if you were told at the start of the year that this is the type of Devontae Jones you were going to get at the start of the season, then those expectations would have been pretty high, because I mean he's been playing at a much above a replacement level Big Ten point guard for a while now.
Right. And you also look at Caleb Houston, who has had a couple of very strong games of late, 21 against Illinois. It looks like he's more comfortable shooting the basketball. And they needed that on a tough day for Hunter Dickinson, who was 4 for 13. It's a tough matchup the way Illinois was playing him.
Yeah, I mean, listen, that's really one team that Hunter Dickinson hasn't quite been able to figure out. And it's only 2 games. I mean, I think if you ask those Michigan players, they'd love to see Illinois in the Big Ten tournament if they can get to that point. We'll see how the bracket shakes out. But with Caleb, we've seen this at home from him. He's had some big home games. I thought that three where he kind of double clutched in the right corner in the second half, when I don't even know if he really truly wanted to shoot it, but he did, and then he made it. That was to me a step forward because I mean, this is a guy who's got the touch, he's got the fundamentals, he's got the ability. It was a matter of putting it all together and back to back big time performances. Uh, the question will be, can he do that at Ohio State to end the regular season, in the Big Ten tournament, in the NCAA tournament if Michigan's able to get there? Because that's where it really counts. That's where it really matters, and where his legacy at Michigan will be defined. It has been a certainly a unique road to get to this point, but he just elevates so much of what Michigan can do because he is their best 3-point threat, and he really is their only 3-point threat that really truly, if he's going, terrifies opponents. We know that other guys can make it, but if Caleb Houston is hitting the way that we all know he's capable and that he has shown in snippets this season, then that really, I think, opens up a lot of things, and it allows Michigan to not be so reliant on a Hunter Dickinson, where when you're behind, it is tough to run through Hunter because you're trying to get possessions going quickly. You want to try to hit your fair share of threes. Hunter can do that, but it's a little bit more difficult when you're trying to make up ground. Caleb Houston's game very much lends itself to that style of play.
Yeah, no doubt. So now you have to very quickly turn the page because on tomorrow you've got Michigan State, which recorded earlier in the season what I would consider a very strong victory for them over Michigan. Since they have been in somewhat of a tailspin, I believe they'd lost 5 of 6 before what I would consider a Breslin ball victory over Purdue. Um, but Tom Izzo and the Spartans, this is the time of year they take a lot of pride in. As we know, they're going to come down to Chrysler Arena, try to steal one. Give us your thoughts on that matchup.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that first meeting between these two teams, you saw the benefit of a home game for the role players, and you saw it again with AJ Hogard in particular, against Purdue on Saturday. I mean, those players tend to rise up at the Breslin Center, and give them credit for that. We'll see if that's the same on Tuesday night. I'm curious what the crowd will look like because it went from a weekend game in January to a Tuesday night game during spring break. So that to me is an interesting storyline. And also remember, last season, Michigan played Michigan State in East Lansing, final week and final day of the regular season. And that ultimately was the win that got Michigan State into the NCAA tournament. Now, Michigan cannot just win this game and then lose out. They wouldn't get in my opinion. But this is a chance to jumpstart a big time week where, to me, I've maintained that now where it's at, I think Michigan needs 3 wins the rest of the season to feel like it's good, and that's not just this week. I don't think they need to go undefeated this week, but if
Right.
you go 2-1 this week and then lose in the first round of the Big Ten tournament, it's probably going to come against a team that doesn't have a whole lot of cachet. You're in real trouble, and you are depending on all of the favorites to win their conference tournaments, and you're just going to be sitting there at home for 3 long days. But this can be that start. I think Michigan is playing better right now overall. I think Michigan can and should be favored in this game, but it's a rivalry matchup. Obviously, Michigan is without its head coach, and you're right. I mean, Tom Izzo has been very, very successful in the month of March. It's time for Michigan to come up with a big time win and start a week where, to me, unless you want to rely on a one and done tournament in Indianapolis next week, you got to go 2-1 to feel like you've got a real chance to get in without a monster showing in Indianapolis. So if you look at the schedule, you got 2 games at home. Those are probably the ones you got to get, and Michigan certainly is capable.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I mean, if you're counting on going 2-1, you don't necessarily want to put a lot of chips on winning in Columbus. You'd rather take care of Michigan State and Iowa this week at home. As far as Michigan State, where do you see, as these teams are playing right now, a possible advantage for the home team?
I still like the interior matchup for Michigan. Hunter Dickinson against, that combination. Certainly where Michigan State benefits in that regard is that you don't really have to worry about any sort of foul trouble in the game because you can throw, three different guys at Hunter Dickinson and just kind of mix and match. But to me, this is a Hunter Dickinson game. We've seen a lot of great performances from him, but here's a chance for him to really etch his name in the Michigan State rivalry because the Michigan State have played three times. One was a team accomplishment. It was just a thorough victory to win the Big Ten regular season title, and Michigan's lost back to back. For me, as well as Caleb Houston and Devontae Jones are playing, as much as Eli Brooks means to this program, to me, if you are going to beat Michigan State, I think Hunter Dickinson can and would be the key catalyst to all this. He's a guy who can go out there, put up a 20-point double double, and be the best player on the floor. It's not rocket science to say that Hunter Dickinson is a key to the game, but to me, this is a game where he can go out there and dominate. Yeah, I'm always fascinated by the point guard battle because Michigan State has kind of run a platoon and it's worked really well. Devontae Jones is excelling as of late, so that's certainly something to watch. Michigan State has played. They've been inconsistent. I think that what they did on Saturday probably helped them feel a little bit better about themselves. Michigan's obviously licking their wounds after a tough loss, so I think in a rivalry, both teams are desperate, but Michigan certainly is more desperate with the outside context. And we all know the talking that Hunter Dickinson did leading into this season. He can win this matchup individually. He should win this matchup individually. If he can dominate it, then Michigan should be just fine.
And Brian, you touched on the crowd aspect. A couple of deficits. You've got spring break. You've had COVID restrictions that might be holding the crowd back somewhat. But if you ever wanted to see a Michigan State game and get up there and enthusiastically be a part of what Michigan needs as a real home crowd advantage, it would seem like this would be the game.
100%. This is, I mean, it's interesting because when you have the types of seasons that Michigan has had in recent years where there isn't a tournament berth on the line. It's a different type of situation. The reality is a Big Ten championship is great, and that is certainly a goal that every team in this league sets. And what Michigan did last year, it would have been really, really fun for fans to be a part of that because it was an absolute blast of a team. But this is a different. We haven't seen this since the year that Michigan got into the first four back in the middle portion of last decade. Was it 2016, I believe, when they got to the first four, where they were playing for their tournament lives. Michigan is very much. I mean, if you look at bracketologists, you're not going to see Michigan much, higher or lower than either last four in or first four out. They are right on the bubble. So these regular season games, in the grand scheme of everything, we all, if we could all choose Big Ten championship or national championship, I think we all know what we're picking. Michigan's trying to get into the whole thing where you can actually win a national championship. And these two home games, Tuesday and Thursday, they're not requirements. But man, if you go 1-1 or even worse, 0-2, you have an uphill climb. But if you go 2-0, you really can go into that Ohio State game saying, yes, we'd love to win it, but it is not required. And there's a level of calmness to that, I think, to where hey, just get a favorable draw in the Big Ten tournament, win a game or two, and then see your name on Selection Sunday in the round of 64, not in the first four. So I know this hasn't been the season that people have expected from this team, but these two games are unlike most that we've seen in Chrysler Center in recent years because they will directly be involved in what happens for Michigan in 13 days on Selection Sunday. And to me, there's something that we can all embrace about that, while understanding that, yeah, a team that started number 6 in the nation fighting for a tournament berth isn't great for the long term. Hey, there's nothing you can do about that now. Go get a couple of wins at home, and the fans can definitely be a big part of that.
Absolutely. And terrific observations. One of the other things that nobody expected at this point in the season is to look at the Michigan sideline and see Phil Martelli calling the shots, and see Sadi Washington and Howard Isley being the guys you knew that they were going to be there as assistants, but stepping up in the absence of Juwan Howard. And I can't help but think, as I watch these games, these last games play out, about Juwan and the passion that he feels and the investment that he has with this team, and how it has to really, really hurt him inside as he is sideline watching these games. Your thoughts on the whole coaching situation at this point, the job that these guys are doing, and how tough this must be for the head coach.
Yeah, I mean, you said it. This is a man who has been at this program for 3 years, and now he will be a part of three very unique marches. His first year, everything ended. Didn't get a chance with a veteran laden team that I think had a chance to make a run in the Big Ten and the NCAA tournaments. Then last year, amazing season, but no fans. This year, he will miss the first 3 games of March. He will miss the last 2 games of February. Um, Listen, he made a mistake and he paid for it, and he deserved to pay for it. I think anyone who was around this program would say the same. But what also has helped is that he has, throughout his time here, empowered the coaching staff, empowered the players to have a voice, to talk, to share their beliefs, their thoughts, their game plans. And that's where this is coming through. Now, it remains to be seen if it will be a successful run. If Michigan can go 2-1 or 3-0 this week, then that's great. If not, yeah, there'll be the questions of, well, what would have happened had Coach Howard been on the sidelines for those 5 games? But uh, this is a situation that Michigan has been indirectly preparing for, because they have said this is 1 through 17, or I guess 1 through 16 now. This is the entire coaching staff. Anyone around the program has the ability to speak up. And because of that, individuals are prepared for these situations. And Phil Martelli, I've said it all week, he's the best backup quarterback in the NFL. To have that type of head coaching experience for this situation and this program is a luxury that I don't think anyone else in college basketball enjoys. So to have that is huge. Sadi Washington and Howard Isley I've always been so impressed with what they bring to the table. And Chris Hunter too, getting the chance of the third assistant, the former Wolverine, who's put in so much work behind the scenes. I mean, this is a guy who was helping the team get back to Ann Arbor from Iowa on Friday morning because we couldn't get in because of the snow. And 2 days later, he's helping with game plans because he's the third assistant. I'm happy for him, even though it's not the way you want that type of opportunity to present itself. So, for me, it's been interesting to watch. You're glad to see that Coach Howard will be back for the postseason, but this is something that the way he's run his program has allowed the rest of the staff to be at least understanding of the position and the responsibility that they're in. This is new. This is different. This is expanded for all of them, but they would be less prepared in a lot of other programs compared to what they did and how they handled their business when Coach Howard was around.
There's no question about it. And great observations, Brian Boesch, Michigan radio play-by-play man for basketball. And as you said, if you had to turn it over to a guy that is not going to blink, not going to flinch in this situation, Phil Martelli is your guy. We'll see what he and the assistant coaches and all of the Wolverines do against Michigan State tomorrow night. Uh, Brian, thanks so much for being with us, and we will continue to speak with you throughout whatever is left of Michigan season, and what they do this week may have a whole lot to do with that.